Thank you very much. Well, I know some of you, I think, no, Wojtek, where are you, Wojtek? So since we are few people, I will try to make somehow interactive, despite that the topic is quite apart from what you are now doing, I mean in this studio, but this somehow relate with your future work as architects. Now you are in the master program and you will finish, I suppose, in a year, something like that. And after you go to the, let's go to say, labor market and get the authorization to sing projects. Some of you are from outside Poland, isn't it? Which countries do we have here? Spain, so we have some familiar. From Madrid. Great. And some other countries present here?
Norway.
Norway. So we will be talking something about the European Union, so it's quite transversal to what we are going to discuss. Also, it is an opportunity to discuss the approach I will provide with Professor Nawalny, who is one of the most respected experts in energy performance, energy efficiency. So perhaps we can make together the lecture from my perspective, which is more economical, and his perspective that is more technological. So basically, today I want to talk about the efforts that are being made in the European Union in order to promote the decarbonization of the property market, the buildings. I mean, basically, the new buildings. So, as perhaps you are already aware, most of the energy in Europe is consumed by buildings, even more than the transport industry, which looks like the, let's go to say, energy intensive. And most of the emissions, I mean the CO2 emissions, the greenhouse effect gases, are being produced by buildings. The buildings you are designing are, let's go to say, one of the most polluters elements in the urban environment. And these figures are related only to the operational of the buildings. I mean, not with the production of materials, not with the destruction or the recycling of the materials after the life cycle of the building. So the figures could be more impressive if we take into consideration all the life of the buildings. Of course, having a really inefficient real estate park or real estate stock has many, let's go to say, repercussions. I have talked about the environment. But for example, people, regarding the social dimension, is also affected by this kind of buildings. Why do you think that people is affected by having this inefficient real estate stock? Your name is? Sorry?
Adrian.
Adrian. So why people is affected by these poor performing buildings? You can say whatever you want. I mean, sorry?
Can I say I know?
Some idea or hypothesis? Wojtek, you have for sure a hypothesis. Yes, the question is why the poor performing buildings are affecting the life of people.
Why? Probably because one of those examples are below the average or below the expectations, maybe?
For example, below the expectations, and that means below the thermal comfort, for example, or even the repercussions on health. I mean, the health of people is affected by a poor performing environment. But also it has, of course, economical repercussions, and not only economical, but geopolitical repercussions. We here have a war that is 1,000 kilometers away from this place, that is being produced by the huge energy dependency of Europe on, let's go to say, the importations of gas. So for those reasons, basically because people is being repercuted by the poor performing real estate stock, the European Union has engaged with the decarbonization of buildings since almost 20 years ago. The first time was when the Union was joining the Kyoto Treaty. Basically, they promised to achieve this objective 2020, that means reduce 20% emissions of the gases of the greenhouse, to produce more renewable energy, and to reduce the consumption of the energy used by all the economy, and namely the buildings. So for that reason, the Commission made an analysis about all the sectors, the transport, the manufacturing, and also the production of energy, and arrived at the conclusion that the building sector, I mean the existing buildings, was one of the main, let's go to say, sectors with a larger room for improvement. So they estimate that if the retrofit of the buildings could be achieved using a directive that was passed almost 20 years ago, the reduction of the energy consumption will be dropped by 6%. In achieving such a decarbonization, basically they designed a toolbox that was comprising, let's go to say, a carrot side and a stick, let's go to say, side. I mean, mandatory policies to be implemented and optional or potestative policies. On the hand of the mandatory policies appeared almost 14 years ago the concept of the near to zero energy buildings. What is exactly a near to zero energy building? You should be aware, because now it is mandatory that all new premises to be delivered must accompany with this definition. Do you have any idea? Professor Navoni, you have perhaps the best opinion here.
Never heard of it. No. So let's say that zero energy building or nearly zero energy building has been the target until 2-3 years ago. High to achieve, and it's been a bit reductionist because every country then developed a simple Excel to get to the numbers, but the big ambiguity of the system was that what you calculate with this simple Excel, it's very different from the real consumption of the building. But I guess that for 2030 there is a plan of have all buildings as zero energy building or carbon negative, so that absorb and sequestrate more carbon from the atmosphere than the carbon that is emitted. There is also a shift from energy to carbon. I think the target is changing, so also as architect we change much more our topic to talk about emission rather than energy that is used. I think this is very important for your vocabulary.
Exactly, the concept.
To use the concept of carbon rather than watt-hour square meter. That will be the new language. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And of course, these buildings are already mandatory. All of them must accomplish the standard, the national standard. I mean, there is an European directive providing a guidance, and each country has their own standards. And that means, for example, that in Spain, the ratings A, B, and C, the energy performance certificates, are compatible, let's go to say, in the line of the near to zero energy buildings. But in other countries, they are more restrictive, and only the top efficient buildings are considered such as this kind of buildings. But as you see, when you were already in the labor market, all the public buildings in 28 have to be, let's go to say, zero emissions. That means that they produce locally or at a district level the energy they are using.
Yeah, sorry, can I just add something?
Yes.
We didn't agree before, but can you see before that there they talk about energy and here they talk about emission. So this is the mental shift from,
You catch the idea between the difference between energy and emissions, because the energy can be completely renewable. That means that it doesn't produce emissions. No? So basically, it changed the idea. So Also, that you can contribute, let's go to say, to achieve this paradigm by putting, as Professor Navalny said, this greenery that is absorbing the carbon be produced by the energy that is not, let's go to say, locally produced. But the problem is not the new buildings. Really, the problem comes from all the existing buildings that are really in a poor performing state. Basically, because Europe was rebuilt after the war. And it was rebuilt when, let's go to say, the technology was poor in terms of energy efficiency. It was necessary to rebuild quick the cities because people didn't have homes. And finally, they basically use, let's go to say, concrete, which is not the best, let's go to say, insulating material that we have, and it produces a lot of emissions in order to be produced. So a large proportion of the build stock is inefficient, but the buildings are, let's go to say, very valuable. I mean, the value they have is too expensive, so that makes that their life is very long. That means that most of them will be still in use in almost 25 years ahead. That means that we have a huge problem, and the problem will be not solved by the new buildings that you are now designing. You are designing now in the United States, not in Europe, but basically, primarily, your work will be based here, and the problem is coming from this aspect. In order to try to solve the existing building problems, 20 years ago, the Commission designed the labels. I mean, the energy performance certificates, trying to provide information to consumers, I mean, to the people willing to buy or to rent, for example, a home, regarding the performance of the buildings. So trying to provide, let's go to say, a flavor of which is the performance of the buildings, with the idea that the A buildings consume less primary non-renewable energy, I mean the energy that is related with the emissions of carbon, and the G, let's go to see rating, is the home, for example, consuming more of this kind of energy. So using this carrot policy, they try to decarbonize the property market. But why? Providing information to people, is it possible to decarbonize the buildings? I mean, why providing or putting labels to the homes, for example, saying this is efficient, this is not, this is in the medium level, is possible to achieve the decarbonization? Do you have any idea?
People will choose the higher grades.
People should choose the more convenient, and the more convenient is the home producing, let's go to say, less, for example, bill on the gas or electricity according to the energy it uses. So by trying to inform people on the future consumption, the future expenditure on the energy expenses, they try to break one of a market failure. Economists are really enthusiastic about how the market works. I mean, they think that when people require something, by magic appear some producers willing to deliver this requirement the people has. So basically it's like a magical, let's go to say, box, the market, where there are producers, for example, there are developers willing to make a business producing homes, they hire architects to design the building, they pay the builders in order to make this project into a reality, etc. And people, I mean, households, families are happy to be, let's go to say, in this market. But this is only in theory, because this, let's go to say, magic box has many failures, what they call, economists, market failures. And information asymmetry is a market failure. Basically, the directive, I mean 20 years ago, when it introduced the energy performance certificates, tried to bring transparency into the, let's go to say, the property market, trying to inform the owners and users, future owners and users of the real estate markets on the, now I have a call, but I will, of course, hang off. on the performance of the homes. Look, the Commission was support on the ideas of one economist that lived in the United States almost 40 years ago, called George Arkelov. Eventually, he won the Nobel Prize of Economy. Basically, what Arkelov says is that when you have a market where you don't know exactly the quality of the products, such as the used cars market, I mean, when you are going to buy a car, I know that you are a generation that you don't like cars, but in my generation, it was used to be, let's go to say, engaged with cars. So when you are going to buy a second-hand car, is it not perfectly possible to learn on the quality of the car? Because the aesthetics can be one, but the maintenance that has been delivered to this car is unknown by the buyer. So there is somehow opacity in the market. You are not really aware of what you are buying. So let's go to suppose that there are 3 cars, 1, 2, and 3. And let's go to suppose that there are 3 sellers, this lady, which are different ladies, use your imagination a little bit, are different ladies that are the owners of the car. And there is a gentleman, 3 gentlemen, willing to buy the cars, is interested in buying a second-hand car. But they don't know, I mean, the buyers, they don't know on the quality of the car, because there is this kind of black line, which is a border, is a barrier. And the ladies, of course, they know if the car has been stored in a parking, so protect from the sun rays, for example, from the snow. If it has been, let's go to say, taken to the official dealer in order to provide the proper maintenance. If the, let's go to say, the tools and the replacements has been original, so if they are properly maintained. So they, she knows, of course, the state of the car, but the buyer doesn't know. So in this car, which is good maintenance, this is the acceptable maintenance, and this is the bad maintenance, the actual price is this. I mean, this lady is willing to sell the car for 10,000 euros because it has been properly maintained. On the other hand, this lady is willing to buy 2,500 euros because this car has been never taken to the mechanics. So it is completely harmful, the state of preservation, but it is not visible. I mean, because it's only on mechanics. So what basically Arkelov came to say is that in this situation, when the consumers are not aware of what exactly they are buying, the willingness to pay will be, let's go to say, the average of the selling prices. So what will happen with the good maintained car if the willingness of pay is 5,800 euros, which is the average of these 3 prices, but the proper price is 10,000 euros? What will happen? Will this lady sell the car to this guy? No. So what will happen, that will disappear from the market. I mean, the fair price is above this average price. So, and the market will remain 2 offers, and again, the average willingness to pay is the average, you know? So again, the acceptable cars will be lost. And what will remain in the market is the worst maintained car. And not only that, but the price to be paid will be above the fair price that was 2,500, if you remember. So this lady has sold cat for a hare. Do you know this expression, gato por liebre? In Polish, how do you say when you sell something apparently that is good, but actually is, let's go to say, a very poor performing thing? Do you have expression? For sure you have. So this is a problem that happens when consumers are not aware of what they are buying. And this is what happened with energy performance. I mean, energy performance is not like the quality of the tiles we are seeing here. I have a question. These tiles a high quality one? What would you say as experts, because you are architects almost? Is this ceramics like, you know, because you see and you have a knowledge, and you can use this knowledge to make an opinion. But if you go to the street and ask the people crossing which is the energy performance of a home, for sure, they will not be delivering a proper opinion because the energy performance is multidimensional. I mean, there are many layers, conceptual and physical layers, providing the performance of buildings. On the one hand, you have the design. That means if the building is properly oriented or not. If it is properly oriented, if it is sun protected, if it's in, for example, in Spain, they should be sun protected because it's really hot in summer. If it is in Poland, it should be very well insulated in the roofs, the walls, but also the windows, because the energy can be lost and it's really expensive. And also the devices providing the energy, I mean the thermal equipment, should be high performing, such as the heat pumps. I mean the energy it consumes is less than the energy that it delivers in terms of hot water or cold water. And these aspects, I mean the passive measures, including the design, and the active measures, for example, the equipment, interacts to provide a given level of performance. But what is exactly energy efficiency? What will you say? What is energy efficiency? When I'm talking about a proper performing building, what exactly do I mean? Any hypothesis? What is energy performance or energy efficiency?
Quality of this energy you is using in a particular building, the way
It's more related, no? It has something to do with energy, no? But if we have to agree a definition, what would you say is this definition? Normally, what they say is that a nice performing building is that reducing the energy consumed to achieve a comfort that is, let's go to say, on the average, is acceptable for people. I mean, it's not cold in winter, it's not super hot on summer. Given a given level of humidity, as you know, and the wind and the activity being inside is different to be in a gym when the people is liberating a heat, that being, for example, sit working, that you are not, let's go to say, using the muscles producing heat. So basically, it's to reduce the energy consumption to achieve a given level of comfort. So normally people is not aware about this, and that's why they thought, the Commission, the European Commission thought that providing an easy to understand rating, providing information on how many kilowatts per hour will consume, in theory, as Professor Marmolejo said, in theory, using a model, not necessarily measuring the consumption, but providing, let's go to say, a model, people will be aware of the energy bill. But also providing the emissions of CO2, they will be aware on the pollution the home is producing. Normally, people do not make the relationship between the emissions, the CO2 emissions, and homes, because they don't see any, let's go to say, machine working like in a car. For example, if you ask people, do cars pollute the atmosphere? Of course, the answer is yes. But if you ask, does this cottage, small cottage, super well designed, is producing any effect on the atmosphere? They will, let's go to say, be dubitative. I mean, the answer will be no, for sure. So the idea was that, I mean, to provide information. So the economist says, when the environmental quality increase, because you are, let's go to say, increasing the performance of the building, that means that you are saving energy. It automatically translates that you spend less money in your monthly bill of energy. But also, you can provide more, let's go to say, motivations to people to be more satisfied with the, let's go to say, more ecological stuff. For example, Do you have any reward when you help somebody to do something? For example, if there is a blind people trying to cross the street and you help them, do you have any reward? About psychological reward, about making this, let's go to say, good action? Or you are completely indifferent? What would you say? Of course, at least they will thank you. And maybe with this thank you, you will feel kind of satisfaction. Well, people also, when they consume, let's go to say, less polluting stuff, they have a kind of a psychological reward because they feel that with their behavior are helping to preserve the environment, despite that it's not true. But this is a psychological reward. But also, research has shown that people receive kind of sociological reward. I mean, when they are, let's go to say, more responsible consumers, they can be proud in front of the peers, I mean, other people that are in the same level, about this behavior, and they can feel also better because they are helping, let's go to say, somehow society, humanity, to thrive, to survive, and let's go to say, in this journey. So not only economical, but let's go to say more social or more psychological motivations will to make the people more satisfied. And when the people is more satisfied, in general, people is willing to pay more money to get the stuff. For example, you have both computers to work in this class, isn't it? And these computers have different capacities. I mean, the processor, the memory, the graphic board. For sure, there is a relationship between these, let's go to say, capacities, the utility it provides to you, and the willingness to pay for them. Have you followed this rule or not? Have you considered the, let's go to say, features of the computer? And your willingness to pay has been in relation to such attributes? And this is a normal, let's go to say, procedure of people. So if they are informed that with energy performance home will aid to preserve the environment, will aid, for example, to create less energy dependency, look, I have said, it has geopolitical repercussions. So if we were not dependent on the Russian gas, a completely different history will be being played now. But of course, you have to be informed. Otherwise, your behavior is not in line to this, let's go to say, theater. So the idea is that a higher willingness to pay for efficiency premises is transformed into a market premium. I mean, more performing homes, the more the value in the market. So if the value is larger in the market, developers will be happy to contract expert, knowledgeable architects to deliver efficient homes. Because architects know how to produce or how to retrofit homes, or not. Do you have this knowledge? Or are the engineers the experts? This is a question for you. I mean, for example, if someone, let's go to say, a given multifamily community wants to hire your services in order to, let's go to say, retrofit their buildings, do you have the knowledge? And can you provide counsel on what exactly they have to do in order to improve the building or not? In theory, no? Because if you are not the, let's go to say, the service providers, who are? Who? You are the experts, the technician experts. So should, in some countries, perhaps are engineers. In others, such as in Spain, architects and engineers are almost the same. In Italy, is it the same? Or are more artists?
The engineer are bullying the architects.
So basically, this is the idea. By having a larger market premium, you can compensate the energy construction costs, because introducing state-of-the-art equipments, I mean, these kind of thermic equipments that are more, let's go to say, efficient, is more expensive because they are product of innovations. And the innovations have patents in order to provide a business to producers and to foster the innovation. So all new equipments that are more efficient will be always more expensive than the past technology. So that means that somehow producing a more performing home is more expensive. So the idea is that this overcost can be compensated with the green market premium. So this is the theory. I mean, the magic box where everything works, and the market, by informing users, should deliver high-performing homes or retrofit the non-performing ones. But this theory, this, let's go to say, free market theory, do actually takes place in the real markets? I mean, efficient homes are sold at a larger price in relation to, let's go to say, inefficient homes? What do you think? Yes, no? No idea?
It depends on, I mean, like location, where it's located, because sometimes it can be like inefficient villa in the city center, so people will pay more just for the location.
This is a good point. I mean, which are the drivers of the value of buildings? The main driver is the location. Everyone agrees. In open market economies, I mean, 40 years ago in Cracow, the price from the land was flat. I mean, was almost the same price in the city center, here in Bronowice, or in the Wola Justowska. And now, of course, there are not such a, let's go to say, flat landscape of land prices, but Wola Justowska is actually a mountain. Here is somehow a valley, and the price goes up in the city center. So in open economies, the price of properties are driven basically by the location. Are more drivers for the price of buildings? I mean, if you were willing to buy a home, what will you pay attention on? The space, the quality, isn't it? I mean, not only the physical location, how apart I'm from the city center, but also, do I have parks? Do I have services? Are my neighbors the neighbors I would like to have? Isn't it? So there are many factors producing an effect on the prices. So my question is how we can isolate the effect of energy performance on prices, having too many factors driving the prices. I mean, in theory, I have to compare two identical, let's go to say, homes that are located in the same place, surrounded by the same parks, surrounded by the same people, with the same area that you have said, no? And after look if the price of the more performing home is larger than the price of the other. But this is really complicated, isn't it? It is really difficult to find in the same location two homes, blah, 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 everything the same, but the performance, the energy performance different. So what they have to do is to use a kind of statistical models that they call hedonic models. The hedonic models allows to control everything and allow to be able to analyze the effect of one element. This element is the energy performance. So here you have the first conclusions that they got in the Netherlands, in England, and in Ireland regarding the different prices of homes according to the energy performance. Remember, the A is the most performing, the G is the worst performing. So if you look at these figures, that means that everything else the same location, the same quality, the same area, the more performing home here in the Netherlands was 15% larger, the price, in relation to the worst performing home. And the gap is 12% in England, and the gap is almost 5% in the main cities of Ireland. So apparently, this theory, I mean the theory supporting the decisions of the politicians in Europe, was producing an effect, the desired effect. But is it nice that the best performing homes have a large price? I mean, it is nice for developers, but for social, for normal people, is it nice or not? Why not?
People will not afford it.
Because people that can pay the less for the home, I mean, people that have more struggle in paying the energy bill, at the same time, is the people not being able to afford these most expensive homes. Anyhow, we tried to answer the question for the first time 10 years ago in Spain, if also we have, let's go to say, this kind of different prices according to the energy performance of homes.
And is the one from Madrid?
Sorry?
Neila is from Madrid.
Yes, yes, exactly. This is Alejandra Garcia Hoyos, Neila, yes. Yes, exactly. So they were the first that when the new energy performance directive was transposed in Spain, they arrived to the conclusion that all these, let's go to say, differences between the different countries in around the European Union were not in line to translate the conclusions, especially of the Nordic countries. So we decided to make our own, let's go to say, hedonic analysis. But also, it is true that the labels are not the same across the European Union. Look, this is the energy consumption. As you move toward this ladder, the energy is less, and this is the more energy consumption. And for example, here you have Spain and the United Kingdom. More or less in the two countries, the A label is the same. But if you compare, for example, what happens, let's go to say, with the worst performing DG in Spain in relation to Belgium, for example, the G performing level, let's go to say, is equivalent to the C, D, or E. I mean, each country has their own scale, so makes it impossible to translate the conclusions to one place to other.
Can we comment a second?
Yes, of course.
Of course, in Rwanda, it looks that there is more consuming building in certain countries. Italy is probably a bit less because they do fake certificate in Italy. No, I'm kidding. But there is a big problem that this A, B, C, D, F is only based on the heating consumption in winter. So there is no cooling accounted for. And it's a big penalty for the southern country because you want to build a house that function in winter and function in summer, that is fresh in summer. So most of the building, like in Spain, that are classified like G or F, will perform very well in summer. Perhaps these are summer houses or like houses that are used just a certain time. So my big concern about all this business of the normative is that already at the base they're completely wrong. It only happens to be real evaluation of the house from Berlin and above. It's okay for Scandinavian country, but even there, of course, climate change is coming. I know that in Norway there are warmer summer now.
Norway is over there.
Oh, yeah, there is warmer summer, but that's for me, that's the main, that's why I consider the BDED certificate something that you can throw away. You just do it because you have to do it by law.
Exactly, it is mandatory when you're going to buy or rent a home. I mean, to inform the prospective users on this performance. But it is not only this issue, I mean, the issue that is considering one part of this story. For example, the illumination is not considered in terms of the lighting of residential homes or residential buildings. So this is also a limitation. Or for example, the appliances. I mean, the refrigerator, the oven is not considered, and it consumes a lot of energy of households.
4 houses, and not, two mine and two family, but I track the energy certification, and I have the bills. The one with IFG are consuming less in summer 0, in winter very little. They're old houses. The newest one, which is B, it's consuming much more, and in summer is an oven. You have to we need to install an air conditioning. So there is many studies that show this.
Yes, it's quite polemical, not only in Spain, where we have arrived to the conclusion that technicians, even they don't not visit the home when issuing the certificate. They only ask by telephone, please tell me, make some pictures of your home, give me the cadastral reference so I can plug into the internet and download the cadastral, let's go to say, information, make some pictures of the boiler and send me, and the certificate is issued. But anyhow, this is the European law trying to decarbonize. So let's go to say the shortcomings are a lot, but it's what we have by the time being, and it seems that we will still have this, perhaps being, let's go to say, improved, but the scheme is being, let's go to say, preserved. So we didn't translate the conclusions of other countries to Spain. What's your name, sorry? Our colleague from Madrid?
My name?
Yes.
Alba.
Alba, do you think that in Spain people pay any attention of the energy performance of buildings? Very few, because it is not really cold in winter, not? And in summer it's really hot, but people go to the beach. I mean, everything is closes and the home remains empty, and they go to fresher areas to take. They go to Valence, for example, to enjoy. So we were the first to research this 10 years ago. We analyzed the metropolitan region of Barcelona. Barcelona is just this municipality. I know some of you have received some assignments in the studios, but the actual economical system is much more larger, comprising more or less 5 million people living there, more or less like 5 times Cracow, to figure out, or 2 times Warsaw, in a really complex territorial system with natural parks and agricultural parks areas within the system. So we arrived to 3 conclusions, analyzing with the statistical models the prices. That apparently there was a premium, a market premium for efficient homes, 10% more than completely worse performing homes. That this premium, that was equivalent to 15,000 euro for a conventional apartment, 48 square meters. They are larger than in Poland. I know that you have smaller apartments. But this premium was below the overcost to reach such kind, let's go to say, of performing. So in terms of developing, of developers, it didn't compensate the overcost. And also we arrived at the conclusion that the people that do not accomplish with the law, with the obligation to issue the certificate and to inform to the tenant, to the prospective tenant or buyer on the performing of the home, that they were, let's go to say, violating the law, the benefit they could extract is larger than the penalty they have to pay. So basically, most of the offers were not informed. So this information was not present in the market. And of course, if the information is not present in the market, we cannot expect the people to make, let's go to say, the expected behavior. So we got these conclusions. After we analyzed what happened in Barcelona compared with Valence as, let's go to say, the 3rd metropolitan system in Spain after Madrid and Barcelona that are more or less equivalent, and Alicante, which is another metropolitan system. And we arrived to the conclusion that the premium was lower in the areas where, let's go to say, the housing stock was less performing. So it was not the same in different cities, in different parts of Spain. And also we tried to answer the question if the market premium, I mean this green premium, was the same across different housing submarkets. So we identified a market that is, let's go to say, in central areas, such as the enlargements of the cities, where live the very affluent population, well educated, that they pay a lot for an apartment. But also it was made by the new buildings, state-of-the-art, basically located in the outskirts of the cities, or the areas being transformed, originally, for example, manufacturing being transformed into housing, exhibiting, portraying every kind of facilities, swimming pool, heating, air conditioning, terraces, whatever you want. I mean, completely adapt to the demand, the requirements of the contemporary families or contemporary households. And the largest part of the stock, that was the housing that was built after the Civil War. I mean, not the Second World War. You know, Spain was not within the conflict, was, let's go to say, a third party. But after the Civil War in Spain, there was a huge migration from the countryside. I mean, Barcelona and Madrid were more or less like Cracow and Warsaw. I mean, they were smaller cities. And they were transformed into super large metropolitan areas just in 20 years. And most of these people coming to the cities to work basically in the manufacturing sector came to arrive in very poor performing, let's go to say, homes located in neighborhoods placed in the outskirts of the cities. So we identified 3 completely different housing markets. And after we repeat the statistical analysis to learn on the energy premium, and we arrived to somehow disorientating conclusions. I mean, the models say that in the case of the state-of-the-art, most efficient homes, the premium was 0. There was no difference between A level, for example, and C level. Of course, in this case of new buildings, it is not possible to have the G level, because as I have said previously, they have to be in compliance with the nearly to zero energy buildings. On the contrary, in the really poor areas, in the working class areas, the market premium was enormous, was, let's go to say, 30% between the A and the G. Does it make sense to have such a huge difference between the extremes of the ladder, of the EPC ladder? Is it logic to have this? That in the case of the, let's go to say, working class neighborhoods, the market difference of the prices is the largest? What would you say? I mean, from the perspective of the budgets of the people, the energy cost, the energy price of the energy is basically affecting to poor people. I mean, if you have to pay, for example, 200 euros for the energy bill, that may be the average in Spain, I mean, considering the summer and the winter, 200 euros per month. These 200 euros is very few for rich households, and they don't mind to pay even 400 to be in really comfortable, let's go to say, interior areas. But if you ask working class population if they have struggled with their budgets paying 200 euros, the answer is yes, of course. This is a lot of money to be paid, to be wasted in energy to heat or to cool the home. So from that perspective, it makes sense that the most responsive population is the poor population. And in the case of the rich people, the premium was, as you see, in a medium level. So despite that these conclusions may be compelling, we arrived to the conclusion that they were completely spurious for many reasons. As I have said before, the energy information was not almost present in the market. I mean, the obligation to make a certificate was not be, let's go to say, accomplished by the owners. And basically by the owners in the poor neighborhoods. So in the poor neighborhoods, basically, the information about the energy performance was non-existent. On the second hand, by interviewing these people, we arrived to the conclusion that they didn't understand what exactly was this colorful label. Even they didn't know about the existence. So if the information is not present, and if the people is not able to understand the latter, so the conclusion cannot be that they pay more attention to the energy performance because they are not informed. And if in the case they are informed, they don't have the enough, let's go to say, cognitive abilities to understand what exactly this information is about. What? So we arrived to the conclusions that our results, 6 years, spending a lot of time gathering a lot of information to control everything about the drivers of housing prices, was going to the waste. So we have 2 options: to hide this criticism that we have arrived to the conclusion that was in our work, or to destroy our work and start again. So we decide to go by the second branch, to destroy completely our conclusions and start again. We learned that normally when a home is high performing, at the same time, the quality of the design is also high. I mean, when a developer is willing to deliver a really, let's go to say, nice in terms of finishing, in terms of arrangement of the layout, in terms of the views the flat has in relation to the environment, when the developer is delivering high quality, high tier homes, at the same time the developer produces a home that is really energy efficient. So there is a correlationship. Not because there is a technical relationship between the energy performance and the quality, the architectural quality, but because in the market, these 2 things come together. So if you do not control in the statistical models the quality, the architectural quality, one thing can be confused by the other. So basically what we did is, I will jump this information, is to see if in the extant literature, I mean in the previous studies, the researchers were controlling the quality of the home. The quality means the finishings, means the layout, means the natural lighting, means the views, means the singular elements that can be present in a home. For example, the vault, for example, this roof is, of course, an element that is providing quality to this space. And this is related also with, let's go to say, the overall quality of the building. So we realized that most of the studies didn't take into control in the statistical models this quality. So what we did is to, instead of see to other place, to see to the problem. So basically what we did is to visually inspect many homes in Spain, in Barcelona and Madrid. I mean the 2 main, let's go to say, housing markets in the country, in order to capture this quality. Which quality? For example, here you have 2 examples in Barcelona of 2 homes that are one next to the other. This is an 8 million apartment in a retrofit area of the city. I mean, it's not, let's go to say, a high standing area from the beginning of the times, but this is a retrofit area. And you see that is, of course, an apartment that is designed with a terrace that has views to the sea. Is this blue strip you see here beneath. It has a kitchen that maybe is fashionable for some people. It has open space, natural lighting. All of the facilities are present. And next to this home, you have this other, which is, let's go to say, an apartment that it has 80 less times the price. I mean, not 8 million, but 100,000 euro. It has more or less the same surface, but as you can see, the natural lighting is almost absent. I mean, almost it's illegal to have this as a home It is not, let's go to say, in compliance with the habitability laws. You can see definitions, etc., etc. I have not to go into detail. So we have looked at this table, I mean, at the elements of the kitchen, the bathroom, the living room, looking at the design and the quality and the condition, because some of the homes are second home, looking at the singular elements, such as the bolts, I was saying before, the natural lighting, the views, etc., and introducing these indicators coming from a visual inspection from each of the homes, we arrive to these conclusions. As we introduce the quality of the homes, the effect, the impact of energy performance on prices was disappearing. I mean, they became non-existent. So we arrived to the overwhelming conclusion that the European policy didn't have any effect on the Spanish housing market, that is one of the largest in Europe after Germany, France, and Italy. So the fourth, in terms of economy, market was not compliant with European policies. This is a disaster, not only because what Professor Naval has said, no, about, I mean, the poor quality of the certificates, the incomplete realms being taken into consideration, because the market was not reacting to that. I mean, if you properly consider the quality, if you isolate properly the quality of homes, there were no correlation between the prices and the energy performance. So, what we did next is to inspect more homes. I mean, of course, my students were making this work. They were looking at the advertisements, they were looking at the bathroom, they were looking at the kitchen, also the living room, and they were taking an evaluation and assessment of the different issues. This is a lot of time-consuming effort. Now we are trying to, let's go to say, introduce the artificial intelligence to make this work. Is it possible to use the artificial intelligence to evaluate, to assess the quality of the homes, departing from the pictures? Is it possible? I mean, the pictures like that. I mean, you ask the artificial intelligence, please tell me which is the quality of this space. Is what we are trying to do in order to avoid the horrible work to my students to inspect visually each of these thousands and thousands of homes in order to achieve robust results. Is it possible to ask the artificial intelligence? Do you use the artificial intelligence in your design? And you ask it, for example, to arrange your layout, for example, of your library, the hotel that you are designing? Have you used it? You can talk freely because now Professor Boytet is not present in the room. Do you know that there are programs to make this work? Don't you? And do you use? You can freely speak. The camera is looking at me, no, not you. Well, we are trying to make this progress in order to, let's go to say, identify the quality of homes. Of course, what we are doing is to teach the intelligence, the artificial intelligence. So my students are teaching it in order to identify that this picture is of a better quality than this other. I mean, what is representing the one room and the other. We are not using the generative intelligence, that perhaps is what you use, but we are using a different artificial intelligence in order to make this classification. Anyhow, my poor students went to inspect another 4,000 homes. They were really happy looking at the different flats within the city. Arriving to a larger, let's go to say, sample, we discovered what is logical, that only wealthy population was willing to pay for efficient homes. I mean, in general, there are no relationship between the prices and the energy performance. But if we look into the detail, we can see that only, let's go to say, the wealthy people, well-educated, that is, let's go to say, sensitive to this aspect, is ready to pay a larger amount of money. That makes sense because they are more aware about the conservation of the environment. They have more cognitive resources because they have been trained more years in school, and they have developed such kind of sensibilities. Well, but in the last 3 years, many things have occurred. What's your name? Christian. Christoph. For example, Christoph, what has happened in the last, let's go to say 4 years?
A lot of.
For example,
Well,
not about your personal life, about the society
well, we
history.
started with pandemic.
We had a pandemic, and namely a lockdown. For the first time in the life of or parents or grandfathers, etc., we have had a lockdown. That means that the knowledge level on the housing conditions is larger after the lockdown than before, because people was enclosed in their walls. For example, have you gained any knowledge about your living conditions, Christoph?
Yes. I mean, yeah.
Everyone, I mean, and the conclusions are not in the line that we expect. We realize that we have small spaces, that we live perhaps really enclosed, I mean, not in contact with nature, for example. We realize that the comfort is not as we expect. No, we have to turn the heating system on or the cooling system on in order to be in comfortable space, paying a lot of money according to the performance of the home, etc., etc. More things that have occurred after the lockdown.
More.
The war. And what is the effect of the war in relation to what we are talking about? What has happened with the economy, with the prices? There is a huge inflation. The prices of everything has been increased because the price of the energy has been increased a lot. In the last 40 years, there have not been such an increase of the price of energy. More things that have occurred after. Now the Middle East, now really recently. And which is the possible effect on our daily life in Europe?
Also the gas prices skyrocket.
For example, and most of the goods go by this region, and they can be disrupt. This let's go to say traffic of merchandise can be disrupted. So basically, what we try to do is, if this, let's go to say, major events have any effect on the housing prices. I mean, being enclosed in the COVID, in living conditions like that, I mean, this is the normal, let's go to say, for Spaniards. Living conditions are not the luxury 8 million euro apartment, but the 200,000 apartment. This is a lot of money for really poor living conditions. You can see here the air conditioning system. You can imagine how much you spend in putting this to work. Also, a lot of money, public money, has arrived from the sky. I mean, for the first time in the history of the European Union, there has been an emission of conjoint debt. Normally, in order to finance the economies, each country produces bonds that are sold, are traded in independent markets. So the interest rates that Germans pay for the money they require to pay, let's go to say, the national services is very few. If you compare to the pay that you Polish pay for selling bonds from the public treasury. So for the first time in history, all the European Union gathered together to make the emission of debt in order to get a lot of money to restart the economy and to fund basically sustainable projects, including the retrofit of homes, improve the social cohesion and the gender equity, and to foster the digital transformation. Now, for example, it's very easy to get any official document using an electronic certificate. 5 years ago, it was completely a fantasy. And this has been, of course, the effect, not only because of the COVID and all the e-transformation of the economy, everything, even you don't have to go to the hospital. The doctor calls you, makes you a call with the analysis, and he says, you are pretty okay. And if he doesn't tell that, it's because you are not. If you have to come to my office in order to explain what is the result of your analysis, it's because you are in really bad condition. So everything has changed, and of course the telework have arrived, and the e-commerce is held, etc., etc. Here you have the figures of the energy dependency of Europe. Most of the energy is import. I mean, in order to maintain heat, the German homes that we were talking, no? Or in order to maintain and turn on the cooling system in Spain, we require to import energy and to be dependent of third countries. Look, this figure before the war. Sorry?
Yeah, Russia.
Of course.
Before the war, yeah.
Yes, before the war. Fortunately, now we are only 20% from the Russian gas. But not because we have retrofit the homes, because now we are buying the gas to other countries. The same dependency is existing. Here you have the evolution of prices. Look how they went up, not only in Spain, but all in Europe. And of course, the idea is that transforming this landscape, the conclusions on the relationship between energy performance and the prices should change. In theory, if people is more aware on the energy bill because it has increased a lot, in theory, people should pay more attention to the energy performance. If people also has become aware about the energy performance because there is a lot of money, public money, being invested in the retrofitting of homes, the people is more, let's go to say, aware of what exactly is this real. So basically what we did is, again, to repeat the analysis comparing 2020 and 2023, and we arrived to the following conclusions. In Metropolitan Barcelona, 5 million people. First, that the outskirts of the city were gaining value more than the city centers. Because Barcelona has not only one center, it's a polycentric, the most polycentric urban system in Spain is Barcelona. That means that we don't have only Barcelona as the main CBD, Central Business District, but we have some sub-centers that have also a role in the metropolitan system. So previously, as you move apart from such centralities, the prices decline a lot. What we have seen is that this slope has been somehow flattened. What does it mean? That people is paying more for living close to the nature. And living close to the nature in Barcelona means, for example, living close to the sea. That is completely not affordable in the main city. We have seen the price of the apartment, 8 million euro. That means 32 million zloty. 35 million zloty? Do you imagine to pay 35 million zloty for an apartment? I'm not talking about a detached home. I'm talking about an 100 square meters apartment near to a garbage transformation feature. This is the location what we saw before. So this is the first conclusion we have arrived. Now is, let's go to say, the slope has been flattened in these 4 years. The second conclusion is that some features of the homes has gained weight. Namely, the features relate with the quality of the house and the balconies. I mean, the drivers of prices are much more important now in terms of the quality, the interior quality, the design, and the balconies. And those are good news for architects, because now they can pay more attention to this interaction between, let's go to say, the private space and the public one. A balcony is a kind of transition between these two realms. It's, let's go to say, a way to contact nature. For example, do you have balconies in your projects? Do you have which kind of building are you designing? A hotel. It is really important. For example, now it's not possible to sell any office building in Barcelona. Office building, I'm not talking about houses, if it doesn't have a proper terrace where let's go to say, the people working in the companies can go to take a coffee or to have the lunch during the break. So this is the second conclusion. We arrive analyzing these 10,000 flats. And the third conclusion is that for the first time, we can be plenty sure that there is a market price difference between the good performing homes and the worst performing homes. If you have two of them living in the same neighborhood, and there is a general difference between the ABC rated homes in relation to the others. I mean, there is a 5% of price difference in general in the country. So finally, after a war, the European policy is starting to play a role in the property market. We're going to see if this, let's go to say, driver is enough to foster the retrofit, which is the big problem of the homes. But now, in Brussels, they have arrived to the conclusion. Do you remember the toolbox that is made of the stick mandatory policies? I mean, it is mandatory to produce top-performing buildings. They have arrived to the conclusion that all the policies should be mandatory and not should be, let's go to say, the carrot one. I mean, the optional side one. And for the first time in history, in the last Energy Performance of Building Directive that was released the last month, it is mandatory to make retrofits. I mean, it is not optional. It is mandatory to retrofit the property market. In the case of the commercial real estate, for example, retail, offices, they have put some, let's go to say, thresholds, and all of the stock must be retrofit with this, let's go to say, these years, introducing these minimum energy performance standards. So basically, the 60% worst performing buildings have to disappear by retrofitting them. In the case of housing, the new directive produced this, let's go to say, more elongate in the time, more, let's go to say, separate in the time policy, and it is less restrictive. But of course, retrofitting a building implies a lot of money and implies a lot of, let's go to say, managerial staff, and implies also permits and requires technical, let's go to say, constraints. I mean, it is not possible, for example, to retrofit a historical building made from brick. It is not possible to put the insulation that here in Poland you used to put, no? These external layers made from this polystyrene that are being installed in the communist era, let's go to say, buildings, enlarging the width of the walls. It's not possible to put this retrofit system in a historical building. Otherwise, it will lost, let's go to say, the main architectural features of the facade. So it has constraints. It is not easy to go through this via. On the other hand, the worst performing homes are those from the more poor, the poorest population. And the poorest population is the less affluent to pay the retrofits. Let's go to say they have other priorities, for example, get a job, no? Educate their children before going to retrofitting the home. So the question is, how is it possible that politicians in Europe have arrived to the conclusion that it is mandatory to retrofit the homes, especially in the case of the poor people? One option is to put a lot of money to, let's go to say, pay as a gift the retrofit, to hire architects, to design the retrofits, to hire lawyers, to take all the permits and all the managerial, let's go to say, staff, and go to these, let's go to say, poor neighborhoods and retrofit the homes. This is one possibility. But is there enough public money to be used in this realm? Are there only other priorities in Europe, such, for example, as education, innovation, health, or, for example, the aging of the population? Europe basically has a pyramid that is like that. Each time more people is retired. They are, let's go to say, with pensions, with money being paid without working. So how we can go through this, let's go to say, goal of having the first continent in the world by 2050 carbon neutral. That means that all the pollution we generate is being absorbed by all the technologies, the stuff we put into the landscape. How we can go through this decarbonization. And the question is how architects, that we are only part of all the value chain, can provide assistance to this real estate decarbonization. Of course, architects, as I have said previously, in theory, have the knowledge to aid families to retrofit their homes, or companies to retrofit their buildings, architects or engineers, whatever they are. But also, they can play a role, we can play a role within the planification of the decarbonization. I mean, not necessarily the retrofit should be achieved from one moment to other. For example, the windows can be installed before the walls are insulated, and the equipment can be replaced in a different moment. So by making an economical planification of the retrofits, it can be progressively, I mean, the housing stock can be progressively being retrofit. But of course, we have to be able to analyze which are the priorities. I mean, if I have many, let's go to say, bottles, which of them I have to play before the other. And it's what is been trying to do in Europe with these building renovation passports. Are kind of roadmaps indicating which are, let's go to say, the different stage of the retrofit, indicating the benefits, the savings, for example, in the energy bill that the families will have, and the cost, the investment they have to expend in each of the stages. For example, when you design a building, do you go to energy simulation to have an idea of which is the translation of this, let's go to say, design into the energy consumption and transform this energy consumption in money? Which software do you use? Emmanuel, in my school they use the Energy Plus. but I don't know if it's the software that is on the state of the art.
I was in the developer team of Energy Plus in America.
Energy Plus. Mm.
But still the primary engine for Ladybug tools all over.
For different.
Yeah,
Mm. Mm.
I would say that, yeah. Also the Spanish certification partly relates to that.
Mm. Do you use Energy Plus in your, let's go to say, environment classes or technological classes?
Ladybug.
Or the Ladybug and the Rhinoceros?
Honeybee, do you know Honeybee? The other one, Honeybee? So there is Ladybug, Honeybee, and Dragonfly. But
Well.
Honeybee is based on Energy Plus. It's an interface for Rhino.
Mm. So you have 1.5 years to learn on this. I mean, because it's necessary to have an idea, which are the implications. What happens if I change the windows with the energy, let's go to say performance, which is the implications on the cost, on the, and I'm talking about this because maybe you are thinking that your future work is in new premises, new buildings, and it is not on that realm. Most of Europeans already live in cities. I mean, we are not, for example, in India, where the cities are being expanded. And of course, new buildings are massively being constructed, or China. We are, let's go to say, in a continent that has this pyramid, as I have said. So the retrofit will be basically your job opportunities, and you have to have the tools in order to try. Also, you can work, for example, in one-stop shops. Do you know what one-stop shops means? Have you ever heard about that? I mean, they are organizations, private, public, or mixed, that are intended to support families in the, let's go to say, retrofit journey, providing assessment, technical support, producing the projects, for example, getting the permits from the city council, getting the money, not necessarily public money, but also private, special credits, for example, following the works, because families have not an idea what exactly, let's go to say, a retrofit implies. They require a technician behind, receiving the works. So all these, let's go to say, complicated stages are being provided by one-stop shops. And architects have a role to play in this kind of organizations, as they already do in the first experiences in Europe. Or for example, in some parts of Europe, architects are property valuers. For example, in Spain, by law, the property valuation intended for mortgage credits can only be made by architects and surveyors. I mean, economists have not the jurisdiction to work on that. In Italy, they also have a valuation, let's go to say, and also architects can provide an assessment on the value of a property that, as has said before, now, at least in Spain, there is a relationship between the energy performance and the value of the homes. For example, the European banks have produced this green mortgage program that is intended to provide credits with the rates, I mean the interest rates, lower as the larger the energy performance is. So at the end of the day, it's cheaper to buy, let's go to say, a high-performing home because the interest rate you are paying for the credit is lower. But of course, you have to be able to assess, to value the property in accordance to the energy performance. So fortunately, architects, we have many, let's go to say, professional tracks that we can follow after this 5 years training. And most of them, as you have seen, are in line to help to aid the decarbonization of the build stock. So I hope that in the future, some of you, of course not all of you, work in such a line that requires, of course, to get more training perhaps to make a master, no, not this master that you are making now in order to become architects with few jurisdictions. In Spain, for example, we, after finishing the university, we have, let's go to say, all the competences, the professional competences. Here in Poland, as in the United Kingdom, you have to go through a professional, in Italy as well, a professional examination. So in this journey, you have the opportunities in order to get more knowledge and to get more involved in this, let's go to say, huge challenge we have as humanity. I mean, we have to look at the weather change, you have said, no, in Norway. We can look at the floodings that are occurring right now here in Germany, or for example, the heat waves that we have in Spain that have killed 70,000 people in the last 2 summers. So we cannot remain as professionals nor as individuals static in front of this huge change that are being produced, as I have said before, in part by the buildings we are designing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.